few years back, they would have given you electroshock therapy or worse than that, a lobotomy, or worse than...
The Spirit clearly says that in latter times some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons. Such teachers come through hypocritical liars whose consciences have been seared as with a hot iron. Let's look at this verse for a second. In latter times, before the New Apostolic Reformation was the New Apostolic Reformation, they were the latter rain movement. They will abandon the faith. They will not be talking about Yeshua HaMashiach. They will be talking about the signs and wonders that they're experiencing. They will follow the spirits and things taught by demons. The teachings of demons are the Kabbalah. The New Apostolic Reformation, grave soaking is Kabbalah. Christ alignment tarot cards is Kabbalah. Enneagram taught by Bethel is Kabbalah. What else? What have I missed? Everything from Deuteronomy 18 is Kabbalah. The stuff that says don't do it, it's an abomination, it's from Kabbalah. Now it says, such things come through hypocritical liars. Well, all of the New Apostolic Reformation definitely fits that. Whose consciences have been seared as with a hot iron. The people who have their conscience seared as with a hot iron, that's the transorbital lobotomy that happens when people are schizophrenic. Keep that in mind. We're going to cover that in this video.
Obviously, can you imagine if I walk into a mental health center and I say, hey, this is what's happening to me, and I'm soaked sweat, I'm shaking like a leaf, what are they going to do?
A few years back, they would have given you electroshock therapy or worse than that, a lobotomy, or worse than that, the drugs that make you a zombie. Tell you what, let's hold that thought. We'll be right back after this.
If you'd let me pierce your brain with a hot needle in the right place, you'd be happy all the time.
Transorbital lobotomy, a string of hope for grossly disturbed patients. A miracle therapeutic procedure, a cure for schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and other mental illnesses. A transorbital lobotomy is a surgical procedure that involves severing or otherwise disabling portions of the brain to treat a personality disorder, behavior disorder, or any kind of mental illness. Step 1. Undergoing unconsciousness. Position your patient flat on his or her back. Apply the head apparatus tightly around the patient's head. Now begin the procedure by using the electroconvulsive shock machine to render him or her unconscious. 1 convulsion is typically sufficient, but in some cases 4 or even 6 convulsions may be needed. Your patient's unconsciousness will only last for a brief amount of time, typically 7 or 8 minutes. Step 2. Breaking barriers. Peel back the patient's eyelid while placing the point of the ice pick under the eyelid and against the top of the eye socket. Then use a mallet to drive the butt of the ice pick through the thin layer of bone to reach the frontal lobes of the brain. Forcefully drive the ice pick into the brain, severing the connections to and from the prefrontal cortex. Now withdraw the ice pick and repeat the same procedure with the other eye socket. Step 3. Awakening the apathetic. Bruises commonly develop around the eyes following the procedure. Sometimes dark glasses are suggested to be provided. After you have completed all of the previous steps, your patient will slowly gain consciousness and leave as an entirely new person.
4 criteria of schizophrenia. Let's go through them one by one. Yes, you got it. So schizophrenia is probably one of the most misunderstood psychiatric diagnoses out there. I know that we say that a lot about psychiatric diagnoses, but honestly what I see, Kyle, is people are so confused about that word schizophrenia. I think people are afraid of it. I think people avoid talking about it. I think if people see other individuals that are experiencing psychotic-like symptoms, it kind of freaks them out. So this education is incredibly important. So let's talk about schizophrenia. And let's start with what are the symptoms of schizophrenia? How does someone even get a diagnosis of schizophrenia? So we look at the DSM-5 for that, right? The DSM-5 is our manual for diagnosis. When someone is experiencing psychosis, that's kind of a red flag for schizophrenia. So in order to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, they are going to experience hallucinations. What's a hallucination? A hallucination is your mind seeing things, feeling things, hearing things, experiencing things that aren't really there. that are not there in the objective world, right? So someone with schizophrenia will hear voices in their head the same way that you're hearing my voice right now. That's a hallucination, except it's not there. It's not real. So they'll experience auditory hallucinations, means they're hearing it. They can experience visual hallucinations, which means they're seeing things that the objective world doesn't see, right? Sometimes they can actually feel things. That's called a tactile hallucination, where you might feel something crawling on you, right? Scary stuff. I mean, it's really hard for people to understand that, but those are hallucinations. Now, with schizophrenia, the majority is auditory, hearing things, and seeing things that really aren't there. And even seeing things is a little bit more rare. That's a hallucination. So what's next? Delusions. What's a delusion? Delusion is a belief that's not real. So it's not like a hallucination, an actual stimulus that's not real. It's a belief, but it's a very firm, fixed belief of something that is really not plausible. And these people are unshakable in this belief. Now, I want to, that gets confusing, because you could say, well, my buddy's delusional because he thinks he's the best piano player on the planet, right? That's a delusion. That's not a delusion. That's a subjective opinion. Yes, okay? A delusion is this. Kyle, I know that you're reading my thoughts because you implanted a chip in my brain, and I really need you to stop. And there's no way you're going to talk me out of believing that, because I know it. And I know you're controlling my thoughts right now. Please stop. And even if I say, Dr. Todd, what are you talking about? That's not true. Kyle, please, right? Okay, that's a delusion. It's a fixed belief that is really not plausible. And that varies from bizarre to kind of what I just said to sometimes not so bizarre, like, you're following me. Why are you following me? Right? Or persecutory delusions, which means that people are out to get you in some way. There's grandiose delusions, which means you think you're a god. I'm Jesus Christ. I know it. I'm a prophet. He came and spoke to me last night. I'm here to change the world, but really believe it, right? So there's persecutory delusions, grandiose delusions. There's all types of different delusions that can be delineated. But delusion is a fixed false belief that's really, really cemented in there.
And the delusions and the hallucinations occur during an episode of psychosis.
Correct.
Okay, so how long can these episodes last?
Episodes of psychosis can last anywhere, unfortunately, from a few days to lifelong, right? Now, we're talking about schizophrenia here. Now, schizophrenia, in order to have a diagnosis of schizophrenia, you have to experience delusions, just like we talked about, hallucinations, just like we talked about. Big one, disorganized thinking. Schizophrenia affects the way that you think. It's not just experiencing these external kind of like, it's the way that you think isn't linear, it's not logical. Your thought process is very loose and out of control in a way. And in our series, we gave a little bit of an example on that, right? So when you talk to someone with schizophrenia, it's hard to even make sense as to what they're saying. Sometimes they use things called neologisms, which are words that they make up, right? And they'll talk to you and they'll use all these words, and you're like, what? I don't even know what they're saying. Or they'll talk to you and one word literally does not go into the next word. The sentences don't make any sense. So that's a disorganized speech pattern and a disorganized thought process, okay? That's part of schizophrenia. Another part of schizophrenia is what's called the negative symptoms, which is this sort of withdrawn, isolated, internal sort of presentation. We call it flat or blunted. The person just looks removed. They don't look present. They're not acting present. They've removed themselves from activities of daily living. They're not really showering. They're not taking care of themselves. They're just not present, right? Those are the negative symptoms of schizophrenia. So in order to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, let's get right to it. You have to have two of those four: hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thought process, and the negative symptoms that I just talked about for at least 30 days. That's affecting your life in a very significant way, and it's not due to a substance, because people can get psychosis from drugs, they can get psychosis from lack of sleep, they can get psychosis from a lot of things, medical illness, right? So it's not due to a medical illness, it's not due to a substance, and you want to rule out, sometimes when people are severely depressed, they can be psychotic. Sometimes when people are manic from bipolar disorder, they can be psychotic. So you need to rule all of that out. You have these symptoms for at least a month, and then in order to get the formal diagnosis of schizophrenia, it has to progress for about 6 months without real remission.
Got it.
It's shaking. I don't mean it's like trembling. I mean, it is shaking. And I go, oh, I think we're having an earthquake. I'm laying on my back, and I look up, and we have a chandelier in that room, and the chandelier is perfectly stable. And, you know why when you just wake up, you're trying to you're not all the way there. I'm like, I look up, I look at the chandelier, and I go, that's weird. How come the chandelier's not moving, but my bed is violently shaking? And I look back just a little bit like this, and there's a man standing there. Like, I can see him with my eyes. Like a really big guy. I'm laying on my back, so I don't know how tall he is. Close to 7 foot, probably. And he has wrestling tights on. He's got no shirt on. He's built like... Bet you wish you wouldn't have said that. He's got no shirt on, and he's built like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but about a foot wider. He's got coal black hair. He looks like a Native American. He's got deep black eyes, and he's got his hands, he's got his arms like this, and he's staring at me like he's really angry. He's just staring at me like this. He doesn't say a thing. And I go, first I said, someone broke into, I said it myself, I didn't say it loud, someone broke into my house. And he's just looking at me like, stupid.
To take me home. I received the Lord at 18, said I was a Christian. And in the paradigm that I had been taught in, Christians couldn't be demonized. So I had an incredibly bad problem. One, I had a problem with demons visiting me. I'd been taught that Christians couldn't be demonized. And so I figured I was mentally ill. I had the worst thoughts. I would have actually visions in my mind, 40, 50, 60 times a day of murdering my wife, molesting my children, doing terrible, and I'm playing it down, doing terrible, bizarre things that would happen. I would have anxiety attacks. I would break out in sweat. This is 30, 40 times a day. I'd break out in sweat. I would soak my shirt, soak my pants just from anxiety attacks. I got so fearful. I got claustrophobia so bad that we would be driving down the street in the winter. I'd have to have all...
Some wonderful things happened to you and your family. You became the pastor of a church, and one day you're driving a van with a bunch of the children. How many children were in the van?
8 children.
8 children, and someone started acting crazy.
We're coming home from Santa Cruz, California, taking the kids on their 8th grade trip, a small school. All 8th graders, 6 girls, 5 girls in a van, and 3 boys. We're coming home, and we're coming home in this 10-passenger, 12-passenger van. This guy pulls up next to me in a white Chevy pickup, and he says, "Pull over, pull over." I thought we had a flat tire. I start to pull over, and he pulls right up next to me. And when I looked over at him, his eyes were glowing red, glowing red. Now I had seen those eyes before. I had seen those. Demons, when they used to visit me, their eyes would be glowing red. So I looked over at him and I said, "I'm not going to pull over." Just then, I pulled back on the freeway, and he's telling me, "Get over, get over." Just then, the Lord spoke to me, and he said, "There will be no loss of life, and nobody will be harmed in this van." And this peace just came over me, unexplainable. This incredible peace came over me. And the guy pulls up next to me again. He says, "Pull over," and I smiled at him, "Thank you very much," and I waved him on. And then he just ran us right off the road right into the gravel. And we're driving along 60 miles an hour in the gravel, and he pulls over. He just cuts right in front of us, and I stop. And he starts to get out of his car, and I take off around him. And that started a chase that lasted about 45 minutes to an hour down the freeway. At one point, he got the traffic stopped both directions. He got on the freeway sideways, pulled in the side on the freeway like this. We're coming down the freeway like this, and he's waiting for us to come so he can ram us from the side. We stop, traffic stopped both directions. He gets out of his van. He starts running he gets out of his truck, starts running for the van. One of the girls yells, "He's got a gun, he's got a gun." And so I'm like, what should I do? So I wait till he gets right to the van, as close as I can. He's running, of course, on foot, and I take off, and he runs for his truck. He jumps in his truck, and he tries to ram us from the side. The whole time the Lord says, "There'll be no loss of life. Everything will be fine."
The children must have been hysterical.
They were going nuts. One kid, he tried to jump out the window of the van. He opened the window, and he's trying to jump out the window. 2 of the other boys grabbed him, held him down so he's on the floor for half an hour. 2 boys holding him, screaming, "He's going to kill us, he's going to kill us." My wife's got the window down. She's yelling, "This man's trying to kill us, this man's trying to kill us," yelling at anyone who will listen. So we're going down the road. He's trying to ram us from the side. And when he comes up to over the freeway, gets caught in a ditch when he tried to ram us. So we just went as fast as we could. He got up behind us. He tried to hit us from behind for a sight. Never hit us one time. This whole chase lasted 45 minutes.
Hold that thought. We're going to be right back after this. This maniac.
That you can picture neural pathways like taking a piece of cheese, a big chunk of cheese, and dropping a hot marble through it, and you can kind of picture how neural pathways work. And what I learned is that the more you think about something, the wider the neural pathway gets. We're all, like most prophetic people, are real visionaries. So, in other words, if I think something's going to go wrong, think about it like I'm walking through this jungle, and I walk down a path, and clearing the brush away. And next time you think that thought, it becomes a little wider, and a little wider, and a little wider, until pretty soon it's a highway. And so every time you think a thought, it sounds like I'm misquoting this, but every time you think a thought, the easier it is to think that thought again. Are you following me? And so these become neural pathways. And what we learn is that Donald Miller taught us, he was here, he taught us that let me see if I think I wrote it down. Your brain is wired to use the least amount of energy possible to come to a conclusion. Let me say that again. Your brain is wired to use the least amount of energy possible to come to a conclusion. So what happens when we think, when we have a thought, is that thought travels on a highway, and just like you and I typically do, if I'm going to go to Costco, I'm going to go, most often, I'm going to take the shortest path. There's 50 ways I can get there in Reading, but I'm typically going to take the road that gets there the quickest. Your thoughts travel like that also. And again, the more you think about a thought, the wider the path becomes. Are you following me? So if you think something's about to go wrong, and your daughter's, in my first example, my daughter's late from school. Oh gosh, I wonder if she got kidnapped. I wonder, as I think those thoughts, I'm actually widening the path to think the thought again. And thus I think thoughts that actually eventually create a mindset. What is a mindset? It's freeways to certain ways of thinking. Okay, so what is happening when I don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind? What does it actually mean to renew your mind organically? It means I'm building new neural pathways.
The Spirit clearly says that in latter times some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons. Such teachers come through hypocritical liars whose consciences have been seared as with a hot iron. Let's look at this verse for a second. In latter times, before the New Apostolic Reformation was the New Apostolic Reformation, they were the latter rain movement. They will abandon the faith. They will not be talking about Yeshua HaMashiach. They will be talking about the signs and wonders that they're experiencing. They will follow the spirits and things taught by demons. The teachings of demons are the Kabbalah. The New Apostolic Reformation, grave soaking is Kabbalah. Christ alignment tarot cards is Kabbalah. Enneagram taught by Bethel is Kabbalah. What else? What have I missed? Everything from Deuteronomy 18 is Kabbalah. The stuff that says don't do it, it's an abomination, it's from Kabbalah. Now it says, such things come through hypocritical liars. Well, all of the New Apostolic Reformation definitely fits that. Whose consciences have been seared as with a hot iron. The people who have their conscience seared as with a hot iron, that's the transorbital lobotomy that happens when people are schizophrenic. Keep that in mind. We're going to cover that in this video.